For this last talk, I'm going to take you on a little journey, 40 minutes north of here. I'm a research associate at the Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve, which, just like Great Bay, is just like in that same near system. So today I'm going to be talking about the monitoring we do at the Wells Reserve, looking at the range expansion of blue crabs, and how does this relate to the Great Bay Reserve. So since we're in the same system, we do collaborate a lot on a lot of different projects, and monitoring for blue crabs is one of those areas. So if anyone's familiar with blue crabs, this is a really important fishery further south in areas like the Chesapeake Bay and Louisiana. And historically, its range was considered to be south of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. There have been some occasional sightings of blue crabs in the Gulf of Maine in the past, but in the past few years, actually in the past decade, we've started to see an increasing number of blue crabs in this area. So the Gulf of Maine, as we know, is a rapidly warming body of water. So as the Gulf of Maine is warming, is it becoming hospitable for this warmer water species to thrive and survive our Maine winters? So the Wells Reserve is located in Wells, Maine, and we've been conducting research and monitoring for decades within these two estuary systems, the Webb-Hanet Estuary and the Little River Estuary. So we've literally had boots on the ground in these systems for decades now, and it was only within the past few years that we've started to see live blue crabs in our salt marsh pools. So this was a really surprising finding back in 2020. We threw some traps in the water to just get a sense of how many blue crabs were in the pools, and we've actually been monitoring for this species ever since. The goals of our research here is, one, to provide early evidence of the range expansion. Check, I think we can say we've checked that box already. And now we're more focused on trying to better understand spatial and temporal dynamics of this species in these northern latitude estuaries. So where are blue crabs being found? What habitats are they utilizing up here? How does that change over time with between the seasons and across years? A really big question we have is whether or not they can survive a Maine winter. We think as a warm water species that it was probably the Maine winter temperatures that were keeping them from surviving up here in the past. So are they able to successfully overwinter now, and where are they going to do that? And a really big question everyone has is this a permanent population or just a temporary ephemeral population? So we really have to keep monitoring into the future to better understand that. So we're doing this through a few different methods. I'm not going to dive deep into any of these because I only have 10 minutes. But one way we're monitoring for blue crabs is through basic trapping surveys. Every year since 2020, we've been deploying up to 13 traps into our salt marsh systems. We're mainly trapping in salt marsh pools because it's a nice enclosed system, pretty easy to trap there. We also have some traps in tidal creeks as well as off of a harbor dock. Once per week, we go out to these traps from April through November. We have a great team of volunteers and interns and staff who all pitch in because it's a lot of work. And we just count and measure the crabs that we catch. And we're also interested in knowing how cold it actually gets in these marsh pools, particularly in the winter. So again, getting at overwintering habitats and whether or not these blue crabs can survive a Maine winter. So we do have temperature loggers at a subset of these sites year-round. And I'm not going to show much data today, but I am going to show you one graph because we are just blown away this year by just the sheer number of blue crabs we've been catching. In the first few years, 2020 through 2022, we only caught a few dozen blue crabs, which at the time we thought was a lot of blue crabs. But then in 2023, we have now caught a total of 254 blue crabs in our salt marsh systems. So this is just completely blown us away. And so we are planning on continuing to trap in these systems going forward to see what happens to this population. Another way we're monitoring blue crabs is through acoustic telemetry. So trapping tells us where they're located and when. We also want to know how these blue crabs are individually moving throughout the system. What habitats are they using in our estuary? So we have an array of hydrophones set up throughout the Web-Handed estuary. This is a project done in 2022. So we had these hydrophones set up between July and December, and we tagged 15 blue crabs and released them into the salt marsh, and we're able to monitor their movements going into early winter. And so what we saw was these blue crabs really moved a lot for the most part, and used a lot of different habitats in the estuary. And what was really interesting was for some of these blue crabs, we see as we enter December, the crab is starting to move towards the inlet of the estuary, which we think means that they might be heading into the coastal ocean for the winter. Another, is this even working anymore? All right, I can talk loudly maybe in the meantime. Another way we're monitoring for blue crabs is through plankton tows. So the trapping helps us to catch adults and juvenile crabs. But we actually have been doing plankton surveys since 2008 in the Web-Handed estuary. 4 times a month, year round, we deploy a plankton net off the dock. And so we have samples going back to 2008. Unfortunately, it wasn't until 2014 that we started pulling crab larvae out of those samples. It was originally designed to look at larval fish. But we, from this project, have been able to find over 45 blue crab larvae from the Web-Handed, dating back to as early as 2016. So not only are the adults present, but so are their larvae. But of course, we are just one site along a much larger Gulf of Maine coastline. And we really want to know how widely distributed this species is in the Gulf of Maine. So about a year ago, we started the Gulf of Maine Blue Crab Network. And Great Bay Reserve is part of that network. So there's our connection. Thank you.
I can stop yelling now.
Good job.
So the Gulf of Maine Blue Crab Network is a network of over 40 researchers and resource managers from throughout the Gulf of Maine, all interested in understanding the range expansion of blue crabs. So this is a great way that we can all share knowledge with one another, keep up to date as to where the blue crabs are being found, and current research going on in the Gulf of Maine. It's a great opportunity for researchers to collaborate on different research projects and monitoring, and to share protocols with one another. So thanks to Chris Peter for the map, the obligatory Great Bay map here, and photo. So this is just a map showing places in the Great Bay where there is blue crab trapping going on. So through this network, we were able to share our trapping protocols with Great Bay. So they have adapted those protocols to use in this system here. And then there's also trapping going on. People from UNH are doing some trapping here, as well as Helen Cheng from Northeastern University. So there's a lot of interest in monitoring for this species all throughout the Gulf of Maine. And of course, this is a lot of work, so I need to say a quick thank you to the many staff, interns, and volunteers who have helped us with these different projects. And Manomet, further north, just released this great dashboard online. So if you find a blue crab, you can go to manomet.org/blue crab, and you can actually report your sighting there. So with that, I guess I'll take any questions.
Laura, Greg Moore, UNH. Something you said earlier about the marsh pools as maybe being a little safe haven for blue crabs, and you mentioned, I think you said you're monitoring temperature.
Yes.
We've noticed in the pools that both Marjorie and Alex have been working in, that the salinity of those pools is all over the place and the temperatures are all over the place. And thought that the pool depth, salinity, and temperature all kind of conspire together to maybe be relevant to your question, but we suspect that they're just sort of upwellings of groundwater coming into them, which may in the winter be warmer than the frozen surface water. So I just wondered if you, in your monitoring of those, if that continues, that you would check those other parameters.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't even think about upwelling water into the pools. It's a really, really great insight. And yeah, our temperature and salinity has been all over the place as well, which is why we kind of do a mix of discrete temperature sampling as well as having some continuous monitoring within some of those pools to tease out some of that variability. But yeah, we're really interested in seeing over the winter. So right now we have temperature loggers that we strap to bricks and sunk down to the bottom of the pools, because really that's where the blue crabs are gonna be. They're gonna be down at that water mud interface. So we're really trying to get a handle on what temperatures are these, getting back to microhabitats, right? From previous talk, understanding what temperatures are these blue crabs actually experiencing within those pools over the winter.
Thank you.
Yeah, did other sites in your network see this huge increase in 2023 in the number of active crabs?
So there haven't been a lot of people, I guess, trapping over multiple years at this point, since it's such a new range expansion. But I know within New Meadows Pond up near Brunswick, Manomet has been doing monitoring both this year and last year, and they have also seen quite a lot of blue crabs this year.
Do you guys use any marker capture techniques?
Yes, so we try to keep it relatively simple, since we are working with community volunteers and interns. But we do just kind of cut a small little incision in their little swimmer paddles to show that we've actually caught that crab before. The problem we have with like other tags is like if they molt, then they're gonna lose the tag. So that's kind of the challenge of working with crabs, unfortunately.
Can I quick ask a follow-up? Tessa Corsetti, by the way, Great Bay. Did you guys see a lot of recapture this season with the huge spike?
Yeah, so the 250 crabs I showed you are individuals. But if we add in recaptures, I think that number goes up to somewhere close to 400 crabs. So there is quite a lot of recapture happening.
Also, Brett, a couple of questions. How do blue crabs and green crabs interact, and can we forecast what's going to happen if green crabs if we get a lot more blue crabs? And then secondly, I don't know if you've heard, but around here, the osprey didn't do so well in 2023 because there's so much rain that it'd be difficult for them to hunt. And so I just kind of wondered, Connor, comment, do you see more fish in your saying? I guess where I'm going with this is, if the water was so turbid that people could hunt, that some critters do better, like green. I can see gulls and other things eating blue crabs. So it's just a little hypothesis to throw out there.
Yeah, no, great hypothesis. I guess in terms of green crabs and blue crabs, it's something we're actually currently looking into that right now, because it's a huge question, you know. Blue crabs could eat a lot of things in our system, which is bad, but one of those things they could potentially eat is green crabs, which would be good. So right now we have done some pilot studies, just kind of pitting blue crabs and green crabs against each other in tanks. And we have seen these blue crabs, at least after a few days, will attack and kill green crabs. So I'm a little hopeful in that area, that hopefully blue crabs will attack green crabs, but we definitely need to look into that more.
One last question.
James, I think I saw an article recently about the interaction of blue crab with salt marsh and how there's a difference between the interaction in the northern regions of their habitat versus the southern regions. Is this something that maybe you're collaborating with other researchers as well, looking at the interaction with the salt marsh as well?
So physically with the salt marsh itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't, I'd be interested in seeing that paper that you're talking about. But yeah, I haven't seen, yeah, I haven't really looked into their interactions with the salt marsh, if you're talking about like burrowing or grazing or things like that. Yeah, I know they kind of burrow shallowly into the mud over the winter. We've seen that happening in the salt marsh pools. But yeah, I haven't seen any blue crabs like burrowing into the marsh banks or anything like that. But I also haven't been looking into it.
Great, thanks, Laura. Just to speak really quick to that last question, there is a relation between blue crabs and fiddler crabs burrow, and there's a visiting scientist from Chesapeake Bay who's looking at that interaction, so that's a definitely great question to be thinking about.